is flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
I hate this trade for Minnesota, Priscilla. I hate it. I can't defend it. We'll go through everything they gave up. But my initial reaction was, what is going on? And then I looked at it for 48 hours and I'm even more confused. If you had told me that they just gave up 2 unprotected picks with everything else they gave up to take Gobert and his money back, I'm still not positive I love it for Minnesota. And I'll go into all the reasons why. But that was my initial reaction. What was your initial reaction? What is it now?
I hated it then. I hate it now.
It's consistent.
Those guys, I don't know, it was a couple days ago, and I went back and listened to it yesterday. Those guys literally spent a half hour destroying the Timberwolves and questioning the Timberwolves and wondering, why would they do this? Did the owners come in and just want to make a big splash? Is it a Mark and A-Rod thing? Is it Glenn Taylor on the way out just wanting, one last gasp of relevant basketball?
Yeah.
So add Ryan Russillo and Bill Simmons into a large pile of national NBA talking heads that hate this trade, Judd.
You just made the list.
Yeah, that's right.
So this trade has now been bashed by them. It's been bashed by I know that the initial ESPN grade I think was an A for the Jazz and a D for the Wolves, if I'm not mistaken.
Or was it a D minus? It might have been a D minus.
I mean, you might as well. And at that point in time,
You can pass classes with Ds.
just give them an F. Like if you're gonna go that low, just give them an F.
Yeah,
Just-
a D minus
just
is a cowardly thing.
It's a cop out.
Yeah, why would
Just
you
call it a
walk that
failure.
line? Exactly.
Like if you're gonna
Say
go
it.
strong,
Say it. Say it to our face.
yeah, just say you get an F, and then we'd be like, whoa, but you know what? I respect the F. I respect the D is like this. Well, I don't really want to say it's a failure because it might sort of work. I don't know, but yeah. But I'll say this, man. This has been great. I don't remember, and this applies to the fan base too. I'm trying to think of a trade or a move in this town that has caused this many different opinions. Like there have been trades where we've all loved them. There have been trades or moves that we all hated.
Yeah.
But it feels like there's far more of a consensus on this one.
The initial Cousins signing.
I
feel like most people agree that was it was a necessary and good move.
Yeah.
I feel like there were some flares sent up, in retrospect, rightfully so. But I don't remember it being like a big faction of, oh my God, this is terrible. Like this is this. There is, I don't think there is a consensus in this town, and certainly not nationally for the most part. I don't think there's a consensus of, you know what, great move, terrible move. It feels like it's really, really split. And the national press, for the most part, it feels like does not like it.
Well, I heard it was a few minutes after that clip that Declan just played to start the show. And Ryan Russillo, who, by the way, I don't want to just like fillet these guys because I think Bill Simmons and Ryan Russillo are entertaining and awesome at what they do. And they just happen to think this is a terrible trade for the Timberwolves. But Russillo at one point said Gobert is showing signs of decline, which is a huge reason why he also hates this because he signed until he's 34 years old. And he kept referencing they're going to pay him $47 million when he's 34 years old, and he's already showing signs of decline. Now, I agree, at age 34, a 7-footer, you never know. He probably will decline over the next 4 years. But last year, Rudy Gobert set career highs in player efficiency rating, offensive efficiency, rebounding rate, free throw percentage, and a couple others. So I think it was the second best win share per 48 season. Not that that's like an all-encompassing gospel stat, but most of the metrics you look at for Rudy Gobert were career highs in some form. Player efficiency rating being a really interesting one that that's good to lean on as a one-stop shop. So this idea. In fact, you sent an email or a text last night saying, "Hey, why don't we go over the best and worst case scenarios of what this trade could look like?" I'd love to start on the worst case scenarios because I feel like there's still so many people, national media, Wolves fans, like half of my @replies on Twitter, I feel like, that are just like chewing their fingernails to the nub because, oh my God, what if this, or what if this thing over here? There's like a handful of main concerns that people have, and I think we should let's talk through them. Okay. We've touched on them the last couple of days, but let's have a therapy session here.
I'll start by saying this though, unless you guys could tell me I am crazy, which I might be, but unless when it comes to this trade, that both of you can say, no, you're wrong, and here's why. I think the starting point is this. I don't think there's a debate that as we sit here on Wednesday talking about a trade made on Friday, the Minnesota Timberwolves are a better team right now than they were before the trade.
Yes.
So, like, that's what's interesting about the path we're about to go down, and the reaction is it's not like they're taking this gamble of, oh my God, you just gave up McDaniels, or how could you trade Ant? Like, there would have been some things that would have siphoned away from this team where there probably would be a pretty spirited debate about if it benefited them. But it feels like, to me, just the starting point of the conversation is they are a better team right now, and I don't think it's up for debate.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought this up because I think you've hit on the main concern, number one. I think there's three main concerns. And number one is that the Wolves completely mortgaged their future. They have capped their upside by bringing in this huge contract, and now they have no salary cap flexibility going forward. They can't trade future draft picks because the NBA has a rule where you have to have a first round draft pick every other year. I believe you can trade it on draft night, but you couldn't now rifle off another trade. Hey, now we're going to send D'Lo and 3 more first round picks and have no first round picks for this player over here. So, like, what are the Wolves doing? It's an all-in move. Now there's no other moves to be made, and this is what your team is for the next 4 years, to which I would say that's absurd. Anthony Edwards is 20, right? Or did he turn 21? I don't know, but he's like barely legal drinking age. He's only going to get better over the next 2, 3, 4 seasons as the Rudy Gobert contract progresses. You brought up Jaden McDaniels, too. Like, they didn't trade Jaden McDaniels. He's going to get better over the next handful of seasons. If it really train wrecks, they could probably trade Rudy Gobert or Karl-Anthony Towns. If they decided after 1 year, you know what, this whole Twin Towers thing, okay, maybe everyone was right. Maybe Ryan Russillo and Bill Simmons and Nick Wright or whoever else has been destroying this trade, maybe those guys are right. You're saying you couldn't offload Karl-Anthony Towns for a couple of first-round picks. Maybe you wouldn't get full dollar-for-dollar value for the Gobert trade, but to say that there's no other way, you're locked into this for 4 years, it's just not true.
Right.
And then you also have first-round picks in 2024, 26, and 28 if you need young talent. If you want to keep those draft picks and draft, you can draft another player in 2 years, and then again in 2026. You could, if you really wanted to, you could probably trade Jaden McDaniels in a year from now for a couple first-round picks or something. Like, to say that this is, oh my God, they're locked into this. If it doesn't go right, then you have no other moves. You're handcuffed. There's no other chess moves to be made. It's just incorrect and weird.
One, I feel like it is, again, both the people in town who don't like the trade and nationally. I think it's looking at how much was traded here. Like, I think it's just a flat out, oh my God, you traded all those draft picks. That can't work. It can't work. But when you say train wreck, okay, I think the only way it truly train wrecks, because it sounds like Gobert is on board. He wants to be here. Like, I don't think we're going to have a Jimmy Butler 2.0 of, oh my God, I hate this place, I'm out of here. But when you say train wreck, the only real thing that comes to mind, and this would just be unfortunate, is if somebody gets hurt. Like, that can train wreck then. But look, the Butler thing in itself eventually train wrecked. One, they made the playoffs. And two, they were a better team. Now, in retrospect, they gave up a piece of the pie that in this trade is not being included. But I don't see, short of something catastrophic taking place, Cat gets hurt, Ant gets hurt, Gobert gets hurt, I don't see the train wreck potential here. I see a playoff team now that should be firmly in the playoffs, not the play-in game. And yeah, I mean, we could talk about 6 years down the road, but you guys, here's the thing. This franchise has so rarely capitalized on opportunities or even taken the chance to do so, right? They have, if I'm not mistaken, the math is this. They have made the playoffs 2 times in the last 18 years. Mm-hmm. So again, what are we talking about here? Like, the Timberwolves that made the run to the Western Conference Finals, the only time that they've gone beyond the first round, were at the end of their rope as far as that team had made the first round, I think, like 6 consecutive years and been ousted before that, okay? And if we ever get to that place, let's talk about it. The Wild, exact same thing. Perennial playoff team, but you know what? Now it's time to move, and they didn't. And that's when you make trades or when you make moves. But we're talking about the Wolves like they've been really good for a long time and just completely crap themselves. This is where I'm very confused. And again, I will say this. I'm the most pessimistic person on this show and one of the most pessimistic people in this town. Yeah. But I don't understand the context of which we're having the conversation.
Okay, so you've now hit on, I think, you're accurately representing the biggest reasons why people are nervous about this. And you've hit on the second one here, which is, oh my God, if you trade all of these future assets, if it doesn't work, whatever that means, right? And some people say for it to work, they have to win a title. Other people would say, hey, this is a poverty franchise. Maybe just get back to the Western Conference Finals. We can have that expectation discussion at some point. But if it doesn't work, that now you're going to be stuck in NBA purgatory for 8 years or 10 years. To which my first thought is, I sort of laugh at that and say, well, I mean, I've been watching this team for 30 years, and they've mostly been in purgatory. So it's not like they have a whole lot to lose as a franchise historically. It's not the Heat. It's not the Lakers. They're not like the Knicks went into purgatory for 20 years, and I can see they're trying to protect a legacy that goes back to the 70s or whatever. The Wolves have literally nothing to lose as a franchise anyways. But you trade away future assets. You brought up the Jimmy Butler move. The Wolves decided 5 years ago, Tom Thibodeau came in and said, this young nucleus, a lot of fun, but I don't have time for this. I'm not going to wait 3 years to develop this thing. I'm going to get my guy Jimmy Butler in here, and I'm going to try and go headlong right into the Houston Rockets and Golden State Warriors, fist fight at the top of the Western Conference. And so we're going to trade Zach LaVine, future superstar, 30 points per game guy. Chris Dunn at the time was like a top 5 or 6 pick, obviously a bust in retrospect, but Chris Dunn at the time was, a fairly coveted asset. And then the number 7 overall pick, which I think they might have already drafted Lauri Markkanen,
Yes.
and then shipped him. But
Yes.
But a number 7 pick. So it wasn't quite the same haul as they're trading for Rudy Gobert. But like they traded 3 good young players with upside at the time for a win-now player in Jimmy Butler. And they went to the playoffs, got smoked in 5 games. It train wrecked. About as bad as a move can train wreck. I mean, Jimmy Butler sabotaged the organization and eventually got his way forced out of town. And then they traded him to the Sixers for almost nothing. So they wound up with no Zach LaVine, no first-round pick in 2017 or 16 because they traded Chris Dunn, and they wind up with almost nothing from the 76ers. They were bad for 2 years, and then they got back. They came back. Karl-Anthony Towns got better. They found their way to Anthony Edwards by being bad. That's the thing. Like, if it train wrecks, it's not like they don't have any first-round picks the next 8 to 10 years. They just have fewer first-round picks. So the other trade that comes to mind is from 9 years ago, that Nets-Celtics trade that people talk about as one of the worst, if not the worst trade in NBA history, where the desperate Brooklyn Nets said, okay, we're going to trade, let's see here, 5 players, so 5 role players, sound familiar, and 3 first-round picks, 2014, 16, 18, plus a pick swap in 2017. I think that landed them Jason Tatum, if I recall right. All of those things for aging Paul Pierce and aging Kevin Garnett, which was a first-guess weird move because those guys were like 35 or 36 years old. KG was barely scoring 7 points a game. Paul Pierce was playing like 25 minutes a night, and they thought that those guys are going to be the final pieces to the puzzle. So the Nets wind up going to the playoffs 2 years in a row. They had 1 playoff series victory. It train wrecked for what their expectations were. And now the narrative was, oh my God, this thing train wrecked, and you just give up all of those assets. What is this organization going to do? So they were bad for 3 years, and then they went back to the playoffs before they wound up landing Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. They wound up just getting back to the playoffs with D'Lo and Spencer Dinwiddie and Karis LeVert and those guys.
Yeah.
So that was the worst trade in NBA history.
Yeah.
For 36-year-old guys that were all the way down on the other side of the mountain, right? Nowhere near their peak. The Wolves are trading for a 30-year-old all-time great defensive player that's at the peak of his powers in terms of player efficiency rating and rebounding rate and all these things. If the worst trade in NBA history for the Nets 9 years ago made them bad for like 2 or 3 years, and then they were just boom right back in the playoffs with D'Angelo Russell and Karis LeVert and Spencer Dinwiddie. I think that shows you that, that's about as bad as it can get, right?
It's a reset button league. Like, you can reset very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I mean, the whole Butler fiasco did directly relate in drafting Ant. But you hit on him. And so, like, now, would you be like, you know what, I would take that entire thing back and give up Ant? No, you probably wouldn't. The other thing I love, and again, this is putting into context what the expectation of the team should be, okay? Because this is why we won a championship for the Vikings, because it's time. But the other thing I love is there's sort of this feeling of, well, the Jazz traded Gobert for a reason. I mean, look, first round and out. I mean, come on. Do you want to be the Utah Jazz? If I'm a Timberwolves fan, my answer is absolutely. Like, would I take that for a while?
55
Yes.
wins a year for 5 years. And
would I like an LOB? Absolutely, I would. But again, 2 playoff appearances in 18 years, only 1 playoff run in franchise history.
Yeah.
Like, this has been ineptitude at its highest level. And if you tell me right now, okay, Judd, this trade's going to result in the Wolves making the playoffs for 7 consecutive years. They're going to win a couple of series. They're clearly not going to win a championship, but they're going to be relevant, and they're going to be fun, and they're going to get a new building, and they're going to become an NBA team, not a ma and pa franchise store off the highway that feels like they're serving apple pie at halftime, okay? Yes, I'll take that. I'll take that. Seriously, you guys. I mean, this team, this franchise, Glenn Taylor always deserves some form of gratitude for buying this team because it might have left, all right? But this franchise long ago turned into a ma and pa shop with a guy who came up from Mankato to watch the games and with a team that had very little interest in exploring options to make itself part of the league. I mean, seriously, when you look at the best teams, right? Mm-hmm. Have you ever thought, you know what, Timberwolves, Golden State, L.A. Lakers.
No, well, they're like the weirdo introvert at the party that's just kind of sitting in the corner while everyone else is having fun. And now they're like, it's like, what's that Nick Cannon movie or it's the remake of Can't Buy Me Love, right? Where it's like we like paid someone to make us cool. We paid the Jazz to make us cool.
Yes.
And now we're at the party. Hey, all right, let's do this. Yeah, who wants a seltzer?
Exactly. But I mean, I'll take this.
Yeah.
I will take what they're doing.
The third main concern that I keep hearing is the most valid one, which is just the on-court fit. But I think it's only on defense. Because if you look offensively, the Utah Jazz, we talked about this on yesterday's show. The Utah Jazz, despite having, quote-unquote, a guy that you don't need to guard on the court, were the number 1 offensively efficient team in the NBA per 100 possessions last year. And that's because even though you don't have to guard him, he is so efficient when he does get the ball, pick and roll, putbacks, whatever it is. He gives you 15 points on like 7.5 or 8 shots. And so the rest of your team can sort of, they can't be inefficient, but the rest of your team has a lot of leeway to go out and find another way to get the other 100 points over the next 80 shots or so. And so you're plopping him into this offense in place of like Jared Vanderbilt. So it's not like you're taking, okay, we're going to take a sniper shooter off the court here, and we're going to put a guy that you don't have to guard. You didn't have to guard Jared Vanderbilt either. Rudy Gobert is actually a more efficient and better offensive player than Jared Vanderbilt is. So you're getting better offensively because you're not removing Cat, you're not removing Anthony Edwards, you're not removing D'Angelo Russell, we don't think. And you're probably adding more Jalen Noel, who's an efficient offensive player, in place of like Malik Beasley. So I think there's a chance this offense goes from 8th in the league in efficiency. I think they were number 1 in points per game, but in terms of per 100 possessions, they were 8th. I could see them jumping into the top 3 or 5, even though you have a statue guy who you don't have to guard, which is such a lazy, it's true, but like the Jazz were number 1 in the league in offensive efficiency. Defensively is where the questions are. Against certain teams, it's going to be great. Against Memphis, you add Rudy Gobert in for Jared Vanderbilt, and the Timberwolves probably win that series, right? Or you can take Cat off the court when he's, the problem was the Timberwolves couldn't take a 7-footer off the court because then they're like, who's going to grab rebounds? Okay, well now if Cat loses his cool or something, all right, you're going to go sit for 5 minutes, and Gobert's going to sit out there and grab the rebounds, which he's going to do anyways. So there's some concerns defensively against small ball lineups. But I went back again yesterday, and I was just perusing through YouTube, like scouting and film breakdowns, which there's a ton of these great videos on Rudy Gobert. Go back and watch some of those if you guys get a chance, the audience. Game 6 against the Clippers a couple years ago. Game 6 against the Mavericks a couple months ago. And I'm not exonerating Gobert completely, but what happened oftentimes in those big quarters where the Clippers went, they shot, in the second half, they shot 14 of 19 from three-point range. A guard will get by the initial line of perimeter defense because the Jazz had none of it. They weren't stopping anything on the perimeter. Gobert would have to come off his guy in the corner, 5 out, and be a rim protector for a minute. Otherwise, there's a free layup. Okay, now there's an open guy in the corner, and the Jazz don't rotate. So people are blaming this on Rudy Gobert. Well, he can't cover the rim. Nobody can. You can't cover and protect the rim and also get out to the corner unless someone's helping you with your rotations.
Right.
Does he maybe, get exposed in pick and rolls and just, the lack of ability to jump out and back into the paint and do two things at once? Of course. So I think there are ways to dissect him in some of these playoff series, but people aren't looking enough at how bad the rest of the Jazz were defensively in areas where the Timberwolves should actually be competent.
It's also up to a certain point as well, Finch, right? Like he's going to go back and look at 10 times the stuff that you are watching right now.
Yeah, I'm literally watching guy in his basement breaking down film for 10 minutes.
I mean, Chris Finch is going to have Chris Finch is not going to say, "Oh, Tim, I got bad news. We screwed the pooch here, and he can't play defense against this guy or that guy."
Yeah.
So this all at some point in time, and I hate to say it because I understand why there's a hesitancy. But at some point in time, we have to think that the Timberwolves might have stumbled upon competent people who actually can make things work. Mm-hmm. And I know it hasn't happened consistently in a long, long time. But I mean, if you got a GM now or a Pobo that went out and made this trade, and clearly he did it hand in hand with the coach, and the coach is not going to get to training camp and say, "Oh, you know what? Gobert's got some bad deficiencies. I didn't know about this. Yeah. What are we doing?" So this all goes back into, I think we trust this franchise for a reason so little at this point that there's a hesitancy to accept that whatever they do might be right, and I get that. But this is why you have different people in charge, and this is why you are hopefully turning a page on how the entire organization on and off the court is run.
Yeah. Real quick, let's get to what we think are the best case scenarios, and we can do even more on that maybe later in the week too. But a shout out to our new friends at Equity Partners. So we met our new friend Ryan at the Surly Draft Party a couple months back in late April, and just kind of got talking about his company, which is Equity Partners. And we'd like to tell you guys how, if you're in the market to sell your home, how they can be a huge benefit to you and make the process 100% hassle-free with their WeHab program. They'll partner with you to fix up your home before you put it on the market. Simple fixes to total remodels. They'll handle anything between those two goalposts. And the biggest benefit might be that you can move before you sell. So the timing of it can be tough sometimes. We want to sell our house, but we also need to remodel some things. But then we have to time it up with the place that we're buying. You can put offers in on your next home, non-contingent on the sale of yours when you work with Equity Partners. Learn more at equitypartnersmn.com. equitypartnersmn.com. Also, a shout out to our friends at Dennis Kirk and denniskirk.com. It's riding season. We're sitting here. It's July. So if you like to get out and hit the open road, Harleys, Indians, Metro Cruisers, sport bikes, whatever it is, you'll find what you need at denniskirk.com. Over 160,000 parts and accessories in stock, same-day shipping on orders placed before 8 p.m., and free shipping on orders over $89. Ride more, wait less at denniskirk.com. Okay, what do you guys think is the best case scenario for, let's just say, in the next 4 years? That's the duration of Rudy Gobert's contract. Cat will be 2 years into his supermax at the end of that contract, and Anthony Edwards will be 25 years old and probably on his first max contract by the end of Rudy Gobert's current contract. What do you think the best case scenario is, regular season and postseason?
I think it's probably at least a second round, and potentially probably more even with the Western Conference Finals. This team's won one playoff series in its entire franchise history. So you got to start somewhere, and I think the bar is obviously getting out of the first round. The West is still stacked. Clippers are going to be damn good. I don't think the Warriors are necessarily going away yet either. I don't think the Lakers, too, are going to be as bad as they were, even though I don't know if they're as lethal as they once were 2 or 3 years ago. But I would say at least a second-round appearance, and putting up some type of fight in that, too, not just getting there and being swept by one of those Golden State or potentially by that Clippers team. But I think second round's probably my floor of where I need to have it as a successful season next year.
What's your best case scenario, though?
Best case scenario is their Western Conference Finals. The absolute best is Western Conference Finals. I mean, that would be a treat. They haven't been there in almost 20 years now. So I would say Western Conference Finals.
Would that make it worth it, Judd? If their best case scenario is Western Conference Finals,
Yeah.
was it worth it?
Yes.
I agree.
And I would say worst case is probably, God forbid, you become the Utah Jazz. You just make the playoffs. You get bounced every year, first round, but you make the playoffs. And again, you know what? If this franchise consistently begins to do that, it's at least going to be perceived, I think, locally and nationally, differently. Best case, I think I agree with Dex. Best case, like it's hard to put them in the finals potentially, but if we're talking a 3-year period, Ant maturing and becoming, potentially top 5 player, and let's say also Cat gets unlocked completely. And so, let's say Gobert allows Cat to do all the things that Cat does well without the ask of doing the things that Cat does not do well. I think the Western Conference Finals in that scenario, Phil, is very plausible.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to say that the best case scenario is beyond the Western Conference Finals, but it's also such a hard thing to even wrap your head around.
Right.
But I think, to answer my own question, it will be worth it if they make the Western Conference Finals at some point in the next 4 years, which is further than the Jazz got with Rudy Gobert. They would kind of be the Nuggets. The Nuggets got to the bubble Western Conference Finals, and then they got beat by the Lakers. So they would essentially be Tim Connolly's Nuggets. And then from there, is it possible that maybe your next 4 years are about just consistently being in the playoffs, making some noise, winning a series here and there? Maybe you're the sacrificial lamb to the Warriors at some point, or maybe the Clippers before Kawhi Leonard and Paul George age out. But then in 4 years, Anthony Edwards is now emerging into his peak, age 25, 26, 27, and you got even more of a blank canvas if you don't want to keep going with Rudy Gobert. But in that 4-year window, I think the teams that I'm the most nervous about, even though they're getting older, the Warriors, the Warriors just feel like the Spurs, where they're gonna keep adding young pieces. Now the Spurs went over the edge, but they added Kawhi Leonard to their dynasty nucleus of Tim Duncan, and the Warriors have all these great young players. Anything involving Luka makes me nervous in the next 4 years, even though the Mavericks haven't really figured out what to put around him yet. And anything involving Jokic to some extent, they've kind of hit a glass ceiling, but he's the best player in the NBA. But as soon as the Warriors start to age out in the next 3 years, and the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard is 31 and multiple surgeries.
Yep.
The Lakers at some point, LeBron's 38, right? The Lakers are going to be going into a rebuild here at some point. Yeah,
the Lakers are in a weird spot right now.
So and in Utah is going into a rebuild, obviously.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're going to try and put different pieces around Donovan Mitchell, but it feels like there's an opening. It's not like a championship opening this year, but it feels like there's in the 4 years of Rudy Gobert and then emerging after that into Anthony Edwards' prime, that there is a Western Conference window here to take advantage of.
I think the one thing that we're probably not focused enough on, because Gobert is certainly going to be important, it's a huge trade, though, is this. And if the Wolves are going to make a legit run to the Western Conference Finals or beyond, it's probably the most important thing, because I trust Ant. I think Ant is going to continue to go up a slope and get better and better and better. It's Cat to me. If they're going to make a run, Gobert has to free Cat up, where Cat never has games like he did against the Clippers in the play-in or the Grizzlies. I'm not saying he's got to be brilliant every night, but he has to be damn good. And he can't turn into a snivelly, whiny, oh, woe is me mess.
Yep.
That's the most important thing. If we see the best of Cat basically on an every night basis in the playoffs, the potential is there to make a run. If he goes back into the shell of, oh my God, tonight's not my night, I'm not getting a call, I was fouled here, but this is BS there, it creates a severe problem. And that's why I think this trade really potentially is the most important for Cat. Because this now puts the ball in his court to say, do everything that you do well, but we need you to cut the crap. Because, I mean, the fear that you felt and we all felt after that Grizzlies game still is there. It's like that can't happen.
That backdrop still exists. I actually had someone ask yesterday, "Hey, what happened to your Cat angst?" Well, it's definitely still there, but they gave him the Supermax contract. He's absolutely on the team in 2022-23 and probably for the long haul. Not going to come on this show every day and just talk about Game 3, but yeah, that dude completely self-sabotaged and disappeared for 3 of the 6 games against Memphis. Or I guess 2 of the 6 against Memphis for sure. The play-in game against the Clippers.
Because that was D'Lo saved their ass.
Yep. So, yeah, that's still a thing. We're not going to hammer it every day on the show, but it's definitely still a thing. So,
yep.
There it is. All right. Thanks to everyone, by the way, who's clicked that subscribe button on the SKOR North YouTube channel in the last, 5 or 6 days since the Timberwolves traded for Rudy Gobert. We're going to hit you with another episode of Flagrant Howls with my guy Kyle Teige sometime later today. Judd's Hockey Show as the NHL offseason sort of steps into the forefront after the Kevin Fiala trade. So all of our little spin-off Mackie and Judd shows available for you on the Mackie and Judd podcast feed and the SKOR North YouTube channel. Write that down, predictions coming up on the show.